This is now the best open source video generator you can use, and it does it all. It has audio natively built in, plus it can do up to 4K in resolution, and it's completely free so you can use it for unlimited times offline. And surprisingly, you can even run this with super low VRAM, even as low as like 2 gigabytes. This is the one and only LTX2, and finally, they released the models to this. So in this video, I'm going to go over how you can set it up. I'm going to show you how to use text to video, image to video, how to use LoRa's, plus how you can use this with very low VRAM. Plus, I'm also going to show you how to use ControlNet to control the exact composition of your videos, as well as how to use their built-in upscaler. Let's jump right in. First, let me give you the specs of LTX2. This is pretty much the first good quality open source video generator with audio natively built in. That means you can prompt any character to speak out any dialogue you specify.
Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get for you today?
Hi Reddit, time to sell your kidneys and buy new GPU and RAM sticks?
Or it can also do sound effects and other stuff.
Well, hello there, little bunny. Fancy a game of tag? Winner gets dinner.
Win Dead Dinner!
And the awesome thing about this is you can generate over 10 seconds of video and up to 20 seconds without it degrading in quality or consistency.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is making 10-second videos with almost no VRAM. Wait, this video is actually 15 seconds? What the f?
For other state-of-the-art open source models like Wan 2.2 or Hunyuan 1.5, usually the quality and consistency goes down after you pass 10 seconds. Another really awesome thing about this is it's actually crazy fast. Like, this is actually faster than Wan 2.2, as I'll show you in a second. Here's another crazy thing about this. It already has ControlNet support. That means you can take a reference video and transfer attributes like edge or pose or depth of the reference video onto your new generation. So this gives you ultimate control over the composition or movement of your output. Another really nice thing is they've already released the documentation on how you can train your own fine-tunes, also called LoRa's, with this. If you're not familiar with the term LoRa, these are basically smaller fine-tunes of the model for a specific use case. For example, you can get it to generate specific characters like this, or specific artistic styles like this type of anime, or you can get it to generate different like camera movements, or actions, or visual effects. So they've already released the code on how you can train your own LoRa's for LTX2. And the awesome thing is, if you look at this independent leaderboard by Artificial Analysis, LTX2 is indeed currently the #1 open source model out there, far exceeding Wan 2.2. Alright, enough demos and specs. Let's go over how you can install LTX2 on your computer so you can use it for free and unlimited times offline. So here's their official GitHub repo, and down here it does contain some instructions on how you can run this with some raw code. However, it's not too intuitive, so what we're going to use instead to run this is a graphical interface called Comfy UI. If you haven't heard of Comfy UI, this is the most popular platform for running open source image and video generators offline. And this tutorial assumes you already have Comfy UI installed. If you don't, see this video for a full installation tutorial. Anyways, back to here, they very conveniently released this repo called Comfy UI LTX Video, which contains all the instructions and some pre-built workflows, so you don't need to build anything out from scratch. So let's jump right in with installing this. Here it says you need a CUDA GPU with at least 32 gigabytes of VRAM, which is not actually true. In this video, I'm going to show you how to run this even if you have as low as like 2 gigabytes of VRAM, as long as you have enough RAM on your computer to run this. It's still gonna work just fine. Alright, so here are all the instructions. First, before we even open up Comfy UI, it's worth updating to the latest version first. So as you can see here, I'm using the Comfy UI Windows Portable version, which is the recommended version because it keeps all your packages and dependencies contained in this separate folder so it doesn't conflict with existing Python stuff you have on your computer. Anyways, I'm going to double click into this update folder. So you can either click on this one, Update Comfy UI, which will update it to the latest version, or you can also double click on on this one, update ComfyUI stable, which would update it to the latest stable version. I would actually try this one first just to be safe. And this is going to automatically pull the latest updates and update ComfyUI for me. Alright, afterwards, let's press any key to continue, which will exit this window. Alright, after that's done, let's go ahead and open up ComfyUI. Now, once you load this up, notice that over here in templates, if you click on video, you should see these default LTX2 workflows from ComfyUI themselves. However, these workflows are actually not recommended, especially if you have low VRAM, because they're actually a bit slower than the workflows from this ComfyUI LTX video repo. So I'm actually going to use this one instead. So next what we need to do is click on the manager button. So I'm going to exit out of here and then click on manager. And then here is where I can search for LTX video, and you'll need to install this one, ComfyUI LTX video. And if you've installed this from a while ago, then you can also press update to update to the latest version. All right, after you've installed those nodes, if you go in your ComfyUI folder in custom nodes, you should see this ComfyUI LTX video folder. And also, if you click on templates, you should also see that ComfyUI LTX video folder over here. So if you click on this, notice that here they provide 6 workflows which you can use. These correspond to these 6 workflows on the same GitHub repo. So here they offer 2 image to video workflows. One is using the full model and one is using a distilled model. And then they also have 2 text to video workflows, as you can see here. Again, one is using the full model and one is using a distilled model. And then they also have this video upscaler workflow as well as this ControlNet workflow, which is actually pretty cool. I'll go over this in a second as well. First, let's start with text to video. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between text to video distilled and text to video full? Well, let's actually open both of these up. All right, so it looks pretty similar. Here is the full workflow, and then here's the distilled workflow. You can see the structure is pretty much the same. Now, what's the difference between the full one and the distilled workflow? First of all, for this full one, you need to load one of the full models. The full model is a bit better quality, but it does take a bit longer to generate. So I'll link to this official Hugging Face repo in the description below. And if you're using the full workflow, you'll need to use one of these 3 models. The full non-compressed version is 43 gigabytes in size, so you'll need at least this much in VRAM or RAM in order to run this. And then they also have a more compressed FP8 version, which is 27 gigabytes, and even an FP4 version, which is 20 gigabytes. Again, it doesn't matter if you don't have this much in VRAM, as long as you can fit this in your RAM. I'll tell you how to do this in a second. So let's say I'm going to download this FP8 Safe Tensors, and this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then in Checkpoints. Let's click Save. Alright, afterwards, let's press R to refresh your model list, and then on this dropdown, I can select the Safe Tensors that I just downloaded. Now, in this workflow, you can also optionally select to load this LoRa, which you can find over here. This is like over 7 gigabytes in size, and this is a distilled LoRa, which allows you to run the workflow in fewer steps to generate the video faster. So if you do want to use the full workflow, then you can also download this LoRa, and this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then in LoRa's. And then afterwards, let me press R to refresh my model list again, and then down here, I can select this LoRa. Alright, so if you decide to actually add this LoRa, you can reduce the step count and generate this way faster at the sacrifice of some quality. Over here in this samplers component, you can click on this button to expand it. And over here, you can now set this step count from 20 to like 4 all the way to 8 steps. So it's basically going to like speed up your generation by like 2 to 4 times. Now I'll go over how to install these components in a second, but that's the main difference between the full workflow and the distilled workflow. So for the full workflow, you need to input one of the full models, which would take more time to generate, but you can also add a distilled LoRa to make your generation a bit faster. Now, if we head over to this distilled workflow, again, just a reminder, I'm showing you this one over here, LTX Text-to-V distilled with LoRa. This is what you get, and notice that here, it's missing that distilled LoRa from the full workflow because we don't need it. So all we need to do is download one of the distilled checkpoints. This basically allows you to generate a video a bit faster using fewer steps at the sacrifice of some quality. the nice thing about this distilled model is it's basically these two things merged into one. So moving forward, I'm going to just show you how to run these distilled workflows using a distilled model, just to make this a bit simpler. But the rest of the settings are the same even if you choose to run it with the full workflow. I'll link to this Hugging Face repo in the description below, and you can either choose one of two distilled checkpoints. We have this full distilled one, which is 43 gigabytes, and then we have this distilled FP8 one, which is 27 gigabytes. So I'm going to download this one, and this goes in Comfy UI, in Models, and then in Checkpoints. Back to here, let me press R again to refresh my model list, and then let me click on this dropdown and select this distilled FP8 one, which I just downloaded. The next step is we also need to download this upscaler, because how LTX2 works is really quickly, if I open up this sampler component, it's actually generating a video in two passes. In the first pass, it generates a low resolution video, and then it uses the upscaler to basically upscale this during the second pass. So anyways, that's what this upscaler component does. Now, very conveniently, they already provided a link for you to download this upscaler. So simply click on this link, and here you need to download this spatial upscaler, which is around 1 gigabyte in size. Let's click download, and this goes in Comfy UI, in Models, and then in Latent Upscale Models. You can see I already have this here. Let me press R to refresh my model list again, and then down here we can select this one, which we just downloaded. Now here is where we upload a clip file which will basically convert our prompt into something the model understands. Now by default, this uses Gemma 3 12B, which is an extremely bulky model. If you click on this Google Gemma 3 link, and you click on Files and Versions, notice that this is 24 gigabytes in size, which is pretty huge. So if you use like this Gemma 3 model, in addition to even a distilled FP8 model, which is 27 gigabytes in size, that's way too much memory. So you could use this full Gemma 3 model, but what we're going to do instead, just to help you save on VRAM, is to use a more quantized version of Gemma 3. So I'll link to this page in the description below. This is a 4-bit quantized version of Gemma 3 12B by Unsloth, and if you click on Files and Versions, this is only 7.8 gigabytes, which is a lot smaller. What you need to do to download this quantized Gemma model is to actually go in Comfy UI, and then in Models, and then Text Encoders. And then at the top here, type in CMD to open this folder up in Command Prompt. And then what you need to do is type in git clone, and then I'm going to copy this URL and then paste it in here. And if it's your first time running this, then it should proceed to basically clone all these files and folders that you see here into a folder called Gemma 3 in your text encoders folder. Now for me, because I already have this, it's going to say that this already exists. So that's how you would install this quantized Gemma 3 text encoder. All right, so going back to our distilled text-to-video workflow, let's press R again to refresh my model list. And then over here for this Gemma 3 model loader, I can click on this dropdown and then select this one, Gemma 3, and then model 1 of 2. All right, and then for the LTXV path, it's basically the same as the model I selected up here. So for me, it's going to be this one, distilled FP8, since we're using the distilled workflow. And then same with this one down here, let's set this to distilled FP8. And that's pretty much it. Next, here is where we can specify the width and height of our video. Let's keep this relatively small at like 720p, so it's going to be 1280 by 720. But you can set this to like a larger resolution if you want. And then for the length, this is basically how long the video should be in frames. The frame rate here is 24 frames per second, so 121 frames is roughly 4 to 5 seconds. And that's pretty much it. Now over here is where I can enter a positive prompt, so let's select all, and then I'm going to paste something like this. Live stream video of a female influencer, very sad expression. She says in a very sad and crying tone, AI never sleeps and I can't keep up anymore. Then she bursts out crying. Now all the models and this prompt and all your parameters are going to be fed through this sampler component to basically generate your video. So let's actually click on this button to expand that hidden workflow, which looks like this. Again, this basically generates your video in two passes. The first pass is a lower resolution video, and then it would use the upscaler model to basically enhance the video further. So let's exit out of this by simply clicking here again, and that's pretty much it. That's how you can generate a video using a text prompt. Let's click run. Alright, so it was actually pretty quick. LTX2 is actually faster than WAN 2.2. And here's what I got.
AI never sleeps and I can't keep up anymore.
It's pretty good, so it follows my prompt exactly, including the dialogue that I specified. And she does burst out crying in the end. And by the way, this is a save video node, so this output is automatically saved in a video folder in your ComfyUI's output folder. So that's how you can do text to video with LTX2. Now remember at the beginning of this video, I told you that you can even run this on 3 GB of VRAM or even lower. How exactly do you do that? Let's go over this right now before we cover anything else. First of all, let's calculate the total size of everything. So like I said, this distilled FP8 model is 27 GB in size. And then this spatial upscaler is around 1 GB in size. And then this Gemma 3 quantized version is, let's say, 8 GB in size. So the total size of everything is roughly 36 GB. Now you don't need to have 36 GB of VRAM to run this, but the total size of your VRAM plus normal RAM has to be like over 36 GB to fit everything. So even if you have low VRAM, like 2 GB, as long as you have like 30 something gigabytes of RAM, then you can still run this. And here's how to do so. First of all, here's a really quick fix that can instantly help you fit this with even lower VRAM and also speed up your generations by a bit. Credits to Kijai, which is the guy behind One Video Wrapper, for suggesting this. What you need to do is go in ComfyUI and then in Comfy and then look for LDM and then Lightricks and then look for this embeddings connector.py file. Now you can right click and either edit this in Notepad or whatever text editor you want. For me, I'm going to open this up in VS Code. So here's what the file looks like, and you can press Ctrl F to search for hidden underscore states and then equals torch, and you should see this line. What you need to do is replace this line and paste in this new line, which looks like this. I'll add this line of code in the description or a pinned comment, so you can just copy and paste it into here. Afterwards, simply press Ctrl S to save this file, and just by doing this, it should help you fit LTX2 with even lower VRAM. Here's another tip. Here's the file which you would use to start up ComfyUI. So what you can do is right click on this and then click on Edit in Notepad. And you should see something like this. The last line here should be something like this. Now, if you have low VRAM, what you could do is add a parameter called --reserve-VRAM, and then you would add a number, let's say 4. And what this means is it's going to always keep 4 GB of VRAM free. And this prevents Windows or other apps from fighting ComfyUI for VRAM. And it's going to offload everything else to your computer's RAM. Now, if you have even lower VRAM, let's say under 4 GB, then instead of just reserve VRAM, what you could do is to write --no VRAM, which is going to force all offloading of your models into your RAM. So again, you're going to need like over 30 something gigabytes of RAM in order for you to fit everything. But if you do have that much RAM, then you'll still be able to use LTX2 using this method. So afterwards, just press Ctrl S to save this file, and then you can open up ComfyUI again, and you should be able to generate videos with this, even if you have low VRAM. If you want to make this a bit faster, here's another tip. Right now, it's using this Gemma 3 text encoder to actually enhance your prompt before plugging it into the video generator. So you can also click on this node and press Ctrl B to bypass this if your prompt is good enough. And this, again, just helps you save a bit more compute and generate videos a bit faster. Alright, so we've covered how to do text to video, and we covered some acceleration or optimization methods. Next, let's also go over how to use LoRa's in this workflow. So here is where you can add LoRa's to this. Like I showed you earlier, they've already released the code for you to train your own LoRa's, or basically fine-tuned models yourself. If you're not familiar with the term LoRa, this is basically a fine-tuned model that can help you generate any action or character or art style or VFX. By the way, this is the power of open source, is that the community can just generate a ton of LoRa's for different use cases, and you can plug and play them into here to really control what you want the video to contain. So for example, For LTX2, they've already released a few LoRa's for you to play around with. You can control the camera movement using one of these LoRa's. So for example, let's try this dolly left one. So I'm going to click on Files and Versions, and then over here, let's click Download. And this goes in Comfy UI, in Models, and then in LoRa's. Let's click Save. Alright, so afterwards over here, let's click on each of these and then press Ctrl B to unbypass them. And then down here is where I can select the LoRa that I just downloaded, which is over here. Notice that this one is connected to the first pass of the video generation, which generates a lower resolution video, and then this one is connected to the second pass, which upscales the video further. So you actually need to load your LoRa 2 times, one for each pass. So for the second one, let's again select this dolly left safe tensors file. Alright, now here's where I can control the strength or how much influence the LoRa should have. So let's set this to something like 0.8 and also 0.8 over here. And then here it gives us some tips on how to prompt this. So we need to explicitly mention what should come into view on the left side. So back to my prompt, let's add something like a dolly left shot with her dog coming into view on the left side. Let's click run. Alright, here's what we get.
AI never sleeps and I can't keep up anymore.
And there we go. It indeed makes the camera dolly left, showing the dog on the left side. So that's how you can add a LoRa to your workflow as well. Alright, so that's text to video. Next, let's go over image to video. So again, I'm going to click on templates, and then for LTX video, you can see 2 different image to video workflows. This one uses the full model, and this one uses a distilled model, which runs a bit faster. So again, for me, I'm just going to go with the distilled workflow. And everything is quite straightforward. For the first card, we need to load up all these models, which should be the same as the text to video workflow. So if you need some guidance on how to download these and where to download them, watch the previous section. Anyways, for me, I'm going to click on each of these drop downs and select the ones that I've just downloaded. And then for Gemma 3, I'm going to select this 4-bit one, Model 1. And then for this LTXV path, this is just selecting the distilled model up here. And then same with this one down here. Alright, so after that is done, here is where you would specify the width and height. So again, just to make this a bit faster, I'm going to set this to 720p, but this could go up to like 4K in resolution if you want. And then batch size, here's the number of videos you want to generate at once. For the length, this is how long you want the video to be in frames. So 24 frames per second divided by 121 frames is roughly 4 to 5 seconds. And then here is where you would upload an image to use as the starting frame. So for example, let's try this image, and then let's actually do a trickier prompt. I'm going to get her to speak in an Indian accent and say, I've been using this lotion every day and my skin has never felt this smooth or hydrated. It honestly feels amazing. All right. And then afterwards, again, for me, I'm just going to remove or bypass this enhancer node to make it generate a bit faster. And that's pretty much it. That is image to video. So let's press run and see what that gives us. All right. And here's what we get.
I've been using this lotion every day and my skin has never felt this smooth or hydrated. It honestly feels amazing.
Very nice. Let me drag this over here so you can see the prompt and the input image as well. Everything remains very consistent, and she does speak out this dialogue in an Indian accent. Now the end there kind of got cut because I only set this to like 4 to 5 seconds, but if I extended this longer, then it would give her enough time to speak out the entire dialogue. Very nice. Next, let's try another example. So I'm going to upload this image of a woman singing opera, and then here for the prompt, let's put an opera singer singing passionately with string orchestra in the background. And then for the length this time, let's actually set this to a bit longer, like 200 frames, and see what that does. Hope it doesn't kill my GPU, but it should be able to handle this. Alright, so that was, again, surprisingly fast. That did not take long at all. And here's my video, so let's play this. Now that is absolutely brilliant, how it's also able to handle opera, plus, the vibrato, plus the string orchestra in the background, all looks super consistent throughout this entire video. This is really good quality and definitely the state-of-the-art open source video model you can use right now. Next, let's try another example. So This time let me upload an anime image, and let's see if it can speak Japanese. So the guy should say this, and the girl should say this. And this time let's set this back to like 4 to 5 seconds, because that's all we need, and let's press run. And here's what I got. Let me actually drag this over here so you can see the prompt as well.
いい機種だな。
風が気持ちにしない。
Alright, so there are some errors with the dialogue. I think the dude spoke this correctly, but for the girl, this part was wrong, and then I think the last part was also kind of wrong. So it doesn't seem like it could speak Japanese quite well. Now, as with the previous workflow, here is where you can also choose to add LoRa's to this if you want. So for example, let's just unbypass both of these. If you want to, for example, add that dolly left LoRa that I showed you previously, you could use this LoRa, and make sure again that you set both of these to the dolly left LoRa, and you connect one to stage 1, which generates the lower resolution video, and then you connect this other one to stage 2, which is like the upscaled version. So that sums up how you can do image to video with LTX2. Next, let's go over how you can use ControlNet to upload an existing reference video and control the composition of your output. So let's click on templates again, and then I'm going to scroll down here and click on this Comfy UI LTX video. And then here we are going to select this IC LoRa all distilled workflow. So here's what it looks like. Let's go over this workflow really quickly. So here is where we would upload a reference video to control our final output. For example, let me upload this video. Let me just play this for you first. So here's what the video looks like. And then here we can choose to extract 3 different things from the video. The first thing is Canny, or basically the edge of this video, and it's going to basically apply that edge map to guide our output. And then the second option is depth. So instead of detecting the edge of the video, it's going to detect the depth of the video to guide your output. And then finally, instead of depth, you can also use this one to detect the pose of your reference video and apply that to your output. So let's go with pose. I'm going to actually press Control and select over these 2 nodes and bypass them. I'm also going to select this one and bypass them. Alright, so here is where you can choose to either do text to video or image to video. So if you only want to input a text prompt, then you should set this to true, and here's where you would enter a text prompt. However, even if you set this to true, note that here it says you should always upload an image just as a placeholder anyways. So I'm just going to upload a random photo. This is not going to be used. And then here is where we can specify what our video should be. For example, let's try something like a man in a suit walks through a quiet Kyoto street at night. And let me just drag this node down here like this. It's basically going to take this video and extract her pose and set that as the pose of this man in a suit walking through a Kyoto street. Next, again, just to make this a bit faster, let's set the height to 720 and the width to 1280. But this can go higher resolution if you want. And then afterwards, here is where we can click on this icon to expand the workflow. By the way, if you don't see anything on your canvas, click on this button down here to fit the workflow into your current view. So once you load up this workflow, you might get this missing node message. I can't for the love of God find how to actually download this particular node, so what I tend to do is just delete this node because I don't need it to enhance my prompt anyways. And then just to make this a bit faster, for this enhance node, I'm going to click on it and then press Ctrl B to bypass it. Again, you can do this if you're confident that your prompt is good and detailed enough. And then over here is where we need to plug in our models to use this. So for this first checkpoint, we are just going to use the distilled model, which we just downloaded, which is this one. And then next we need to download a pose LoRa in order to use this. So I'll link to this page in the description below where you can download this LoRa, which is 654 megabytes in size. Let me click download, and this goes in Comfy UI, in models, and then in LoRa's. Let's click save. And then afterwards, let me press R to refresh my model list. And then over here in the dropdown, you should be able to see this pose LoRa over here. So let's select this one. And then afterwards, here we need to select the upscaler model, which we downloaded before. Pretty simple. And then here we need to select the Gemma 3 Model 1, which we downloaded before. And then here we just need to use the same distilled model, which I selected above. And then same with this audio VAE, it's just the same distilled model. All right, afterwards, that's pretty much it. There's one more setting here that you can tweak, which is this strength model. So this basically determines how much influence you want the pose of this reference video to have on your final video. So here, if the strength is 1, then it's 100%. This is the strongest. If you want it to have less influence, you can set this to a lower value, let's say like 0.8. And then afterwards, this is going to get plugged through a regular generation process, which is quite similar to, the text to video or image to video workflows that I showed you before. In fact, if you click on this button, it would expand a workflow which looks like this. Now, note that here you might get a missing node error for this node when you run it for the first time. So this requires that you have ComfyUI ControlNet Auxiliary installed. If you don't, simply click on Manager, and under missing, you should see this. If not, you can click on in workflow and then make sure you click on this and install it or update to the latest version. So afterwards, this pose estimator node should work. Now here, you can choose to detect multiple features. You can choose to detect her hands, which I actually don't need. So to save some compute, let's disable this. Yes, I want to detect her body, but no, I don't need to detect her face. So let's also disable this. And that's pretty much it. So this again goes through one pass and then another pass to generate the video. So let me go back to the original workflow. And then one last thing I forgot to do is to unbypass this save video node so you can actually save and preview the video. And that's pretty much it. Let's press run. All right, and here's what we get. Indeed, this is a man in a suit walking through a quiet Kyoto street at night, and he is following the pose of my reference video. So that's how you can do pose to video. Now, instead of pose, let's try another one. This time, let's try Canny. So what I'm going to do is hold down Control, drag over these two nodes, and then press Control B to bypass these nodes. And then up here, let's hold down Control again to drag across these two nodes, and then press Control B to unbypass them. So here it's basically the same thing, but instead of pose, right now we are doing Canny. And let's put something like a woman with blonde hair wearing a red leather jacket walking in a jungle. And again, for the width and height, let's set this to 1280 by 720. Now, here's the thing. If we do a canny edge extraction of this, not only is it going to extract the edges of the character, but also everything in the video, so including the trees and the ferns. So once I plug this through Canny, it's actually going to generate a video with pretty much the same composition as we see here, but it's just that the woman would have blonde hair and wear a red leather jacket instead. Anyways, let me expand this subgraph. And then again, here for this bypass enhancer, I just can't get this to work. So let me just get rid of this and then also bypass enhancer over here. And again, over here, we need to load all the models that we downloaded. So again, here, I'm going to choose the distilled model that I downloaded. And then here, instead of the pose LoRa, this time we need to download the Canny LoRa. So I'll link to this page in the description below where you can download this Canny LoRa, which is 654 megabytes. Let's click download. And again, this goes in ComfyUI, in models, and then in LoRa's. Let's click save. And then afterwards, let me press R to refresh my model list. And then over here, I can select this Canny Control LoRa from the dropdown. And then over here, it's the same models as before. So I need to select this upscaler plus this Gemma model 1 of 2 plus the distilled model that I downloaded. And then it's the same distilled model down here. All right, so that's all we need to do in this workflow, but there's one more additional thing for Canny. So over here on the sampler node, if I expand this workflow, notice that here we also get a missing Canny node. So this, at least for me, doesn't exist. So if I double click anywhere to insert a node and I search for Canny, what I get from the ComfyUI ControlNet Auxiliary is this Canny Edge detector instead of this Canny. So what I need to do is actually replace this node with this one. So let me just reconnect all the inputs and outputs of this node onto here instead. So this image input is from here, and this image output also goes to here. And then let me follow this really long blue line. This goes all the way to here, dependencies. So let me drag this over here like this, and then let me drag this node back over here, and then I can proceed to delete this missing Canny node and replace it with this one. And that's pretty much it. Alright, so that basically fixes all the errors that I got for this Canny workflow, so let's go back to the parent view and then press run. Alright, and here's what I got. So because this is doing a Canny edge map, it's also detecting the edges of like the tree trunks and the fern leaves and everything and generating a video with all those details. But it's just that now we are changing her hair to blonde plus the leather jacket to red. So those are a few examples of how you can use this IC-LoRa workflow to upload a reference video and extract either the edge or depth or pose of your video to control your output. Alright, final thing I want to show you, which is the final workflow. Again, if we click on templates and then down here in LTX video, there's also this V2V detailer, which is essentially a video upscaler. So you can upload like a low resolution video and it would add more details to your video. So this first note here is where I would upload a video which I want to upscale. Let's try this one, which is only like 426 by 240, so the quality is pretty blurry. And then afterwards, here is where we would load our models. So for Checkpoint here, it doesn't seem to use the distilled version, so you'll need to go over here and download one of the full non-distilled versions. For me, I'm going to download this FP4 one, which is the smallest. So let me click download, and this goes in Comfy UI, in models, and then in checkpoints. All right, afterwards, let me press R to refresh my model list. And then here for this dropdown, I can select this FP4 one. And then for the model loader here, we need to download this detailer LoRa, which is 2.6 gigabytes in size. So I'll link to this page in the description below or pinned comment as well. Let's click download. And this goes in Comfy UI, in models, and then in LoRa's. Afterwards, let me press R to refresh my model list, and then down here, I can select this detailer LoRa over here. And here is where you can control the strength of this LoRa. So right now it's set at 100%, but if you don't want it to add as much detail, you can set this to a lower value. And then for this Gemma 3 model, it's the same as before. We are going to select this one, model 1 of 2. And then for the LTXV path, it's the same as this model up here. So I'm going to select this FP4 one, which I just downloaded. And then it basically gets passed here to upscale the video. So here is where you would specify the largest size, or basically the largest side of your video. So in our case, because this is a horizontal video, it's basically going to set the width of this to 1920 pixels. And those are basically the two main settings you need to be aware of. Now, you could tweak the rest of these settings further, but I just tend to leave it at the default. And that's pretty much it. Let's press run. All right, and here's what we get. So, it's not great at upscaling. There are definitely a lot better options. I've introduced a ton of dedicated upscalers on my channel before, but this is another option for you to add more details and upscale your low resolution and blurry videos. Anyways, that sums up all the workflows that they offer right now. Again, LTX2 is an extremely powerful model. It's currently the #1 open source model out there. It's so good with dialogue and even handling accents and different artistic styles. It can do up to 4K in resolution plus over 10 seconds of video, and everything remains consistent. Best of all, you can even run this with like almost no VRAM. You don't need an expensive CUDA GPU to run this as long as you have enough RAM. And this is blazing fast. Like for me, this is faster than 1.2.2. Anyways, that sums up my video on LTX2. Let me know what you think of this and if you run into any errors. In fact, I'm sure you're going to run into a ton of errors. Definitely let me know in the comments below. Be sure to paste the exact error message that you get, and I'll help you troubleshoot as much as possible. As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.